Welcome everyone to this new video of the section related to the theory. Today's videos will be more about math and calculation, but it's important that you have basic understanding how to scale up and down a recipe and how to maintain consistency in your product. As I said in other videos, it's extremely important that you use scales and you're precise in your measurement. So now I'm switching to a slide deck. And this slide deck, it is showing actually a basic recipe to make bread. As you can see, there is the subject of this video is called baker's percentage. And as you can see, there is 500 grams of flour, 300 grams of water, 3 grams of dry yeast, and 10 grams of salt. Now, when we speak about percentage, and the baker's percentage, how they are generated. So, the first percentage that we are going to calculate, it is the flour. As you can see, the flour, by definition, in this case, is representing 100%. Then all the other ingredients, they are calculated as a ratio or a percentage based on the flour, on the amount of the flour. Let us do some calculation easily. So, if you remember a bit the proportion at the time of the school, we have 500 grams of flour, in this case, is to 100% as 300 grams of water is to X%. Now, we need to calculate what is this percentage. If you remember the basic knowledge of math, we can calculate this X multiplying this 100 times 350 divided by 500. In this way, we calculate this percentage, that is 70%. So, this 70% means that the amount of water that we are using for this recipe, or also called the hydration, it is 70%. So if we have 1 kilo of flour, will be 700 grams. If you have, in this case, 500 grams of flour, will become 350. As you can notice, I calculated also the percentage of the other ingredients. For example, it is really standard that I use 2% of salt whenever I make the bread. So I know that by heart that it is 20 grams per kilo of flour. But in this case, as you can see, half kilo of flours, it is 2%. Why we are doing this calculation? We are doing this calculation because if we want to scale up or down our recipe, it will become extremely easy. Now I'm going to make an example below. So, as you can notice, my intention is I want to keep the same recipe, but I want to use 700 grams of flour. So, in this case, 700 grams is representing my 100%. And all the other ingredients I'm calculating based on this flour, on this amount of flour. So, over here I'm writing 700 times 70 divided by 100. Or I can make this division in advance, so I can say 700 times 0.7. That is making 490 grams of water. That's still the 70%. So the percentage is not changing, it's changing the amount of the water that I'm using. Similar calculation also for the dry yeast and for the salt. I hope this makes sense for you. If you have any question, you can write me in the comments, I'm happy to explain you. So, I know that can become a bit more complicated than this. So at this moment I use just 4 basic ingredients, but I want to show you a more complex scenario. Next scenario, it is, now, from the previous recipe, I'm using just 2 ingredients to make it simple, okay? But all the other ingredients, as I say, they are calculated on the percentage of the flour. Okay, on the amount of the flour. So in this case I'm considering 500 grams of flour and 350 grams of water. So this means that my 100% it is represented by the flour, by definition, as we said before, and 70% is representing my total hydration of the bread. Why this is a more complex scenario? Because I want to show you a recipe that is made in 2 phases. So I have a pre-fermentation or pre-ferment. In this case I'm considering a biga, okay? So it's like that you make first a small recipe and then in the refreshment you complete that recipe. Now my biga, as you can see, I want to use 50% of biga. So when I'm saying 50% biga, in reality means that I want to use of my total flour half of it. And the other information that I'm passing here is, I'm using in this case the biga with the formula of the master Giorilli, and it is 45% of hydration. Now don't get confused on this. When I'm saying 50% biga, I'm saying that I want to use half of the flour. So if I take the whole flour here, the 100%, this 500 grams of flours, and I multiply by 50%, I'm getting 250 of flour. Now, at this moment, this is representing my 100% parcel, okay? So when I need to calculate this 45% of hydration, I'm not calculating on the top flour, but only on the flour that I'm using for this. So it's like a sub-recipe. So in this scenario, we can see that I'm calculating that 45% of hydration based on these 250 grams of flour. So as I wrote here, it is 45% parcel hydration, okay? This hydration, it is part of the water that I will use in the remaining part of the recipe. Then, when I will go to the refreshment, for the refreshment I think it's simpler, because we know what is the total amount of flour that we want to use. So in this case what we will do is just subtracting from the total what we already used for the biga. For the flour become extremely simple, it is 250 grams of flour. For the water can become a bit more complex, but remember, we know that is 350 grams of water for our recipe for the 70% of hydration, so we just take 350 minus the water that we used for the hydration of the biga. I hope this calculation is now clear, and this is extremely important that you apply in your recipe. It's important also that you have this basic understanding. I know that there are tools like the calculators in my website that simplify this calculation, but be careful, because if the calculation is done wrongly, you can mess it up all your recipe and your result. So if you have any question, I'm happy to reply to your questions in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you to the next video. Bye.